Well, right now I'm Gruel in the new show. And if you go to Disneyland, I'm Darth Vader, if you go meet him. And General Tarples, a few of the other shows. I play Qui-Gon Jinn, the Zilla Beast, the Slave. I had the name of them. Right here, you got me too early. This is what I was writing. Oh, sorry, you have a microphone.
You're sexy, but you don't get too much.
Oporexis. Qui-Gon Jinn, General Tarples, Zilla Beast, Gruel, done a lot of stuff for the games, a lot of Wookiee talk, and other Jedi and Sith. So it's great to see you guys. Worship.
I mean, it's very good to see you.
Nice surprise, huh? Pretty good. Yeah, so we're really sad that James and Vanessa could not be here with us. But they're out making money and stuff.
No,
so.
Governor Price finally got all of them.
We have nothing better to do, so we showed up. No, we love you guys. Thank you for having us here. I'm Steve Blum. I play Severelios on Star Wars Rebels. And thank you for that one person who knows. And 1/3 of all the stormtroopers in the games and in that show and in a couple of movies now too. I got to be in Solo and Rogue One. I was actually one of the guys who said kill them slower when Chewie and Han first met each other. So, yeah, so another reason they hate me. Yes, yes. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is my Governor Price.
Hello, I'm Mary Elizabeth McGlynn, and I play Governor Price in Star Wars Rebels. Oh, Rebels, stop. All of you. All of you. I also play Freya Fenris in Star Wars Resistance, along with 40 men. And Jukes, and I'm also Star Wars Resistance voiceover director as well. So, yay!
That's Sabine.
That's Sabine.
Not Tia Sarkar, unfortunately. I'm Zoe, and I run the Star Wars Geeker podcast with Lizzie Perales, who's the first Sabine. And I'm here with you guys today.
Okay.
Thank you. She's here to keep us out of jail. Is basically what that is. Yeah. Is there a plan for this?
I have questions.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
I'd like
We
to
have
answer questions.
So do I.
Don't
I
make
have a
them
lot
long.
of questions.
Oh, also we brought, for the weirdest question from the audience later, if we get two really weird questions, we have two of these that we're going to sign for you guys.
Mm-hmm. We also have some at our tables down in the dealer hall, or up in the dealer hall. This is down. It's the upside down. I don't know if you've noticed that, but we've been in there for a while now.
Come visit us down there.
Yeah, well, 15 minutes at the end, so think of questions now. Think of weird questions now,
Yes.
apparently.
Yeah.
So my first question is just, how did you get involved with Rebels? Like, how did that go for you?
Well, I auditioned, and I remember getting the audition and looking at it, and it was for something called Wolf. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. And then some of the dialogue had something, a description with a light sword, and I went, oh, well, that's interesting. And then at the end of the audition, the character was supposed to be choked by an unseeable force. And I remember turning to Steve going, I think this is for Rebels, because Steve had already been on it for, I think this was for season 3. So, and I just said, Baba, I think this is for Rebels. And when I got the part, Dave Filoni came out, my first record, it came out in the lobby, and he said, you know, Mary, you didn't get this because of Steve. You got it because of you. And I was like, oh, Dave, thanks. Good to know.
He did the same thing for me when I worked on Resistance recently. I auditioned for a part on the show. I played a trooper who just got beaten up over and over and over again, dragged around. And they told me when I walked in the room, by the way, this has nothing to do with Mary. You actually got this on your own merits. We don't do that here, so.
On your own merits.
On my own merits, yeah. I found out the show similarly. It was called Wolf when I auditioned for it as well, and I didn't know it was Star Wars at the time. There were indications of troopers on the thing, but you see that in so many different things. And it looked like a military character that I was reading for. We didn't have pictures, we didn't have anything to go by. Even once the callbacks at Disney, and sitting in front of everybody from the Rebels crew, and they're grilling me through this thing, and I think at that time they probably told us it was for Star Wars, but it just didn't sink in. It wasn't until I actually booked it. I happened to be in Birmingham, England for a Transformers convention, and I get a phone call from my agent saying, you need to go to a studio, we're going to send you out to this studio at somebody's house out in the country. We're going to hire you a cab and just go out there and they'll have your script. And I didn't know what it was. I had forgotten about doing the audition for Rebels, and it wasn't called Rebels still. And I go to this house and I'm lost in this neighborhood, and this sweet elderly couple comes out. They look like like an English version of Ma and Pa Kettle. Oh, right this way, dearie, come on in. And they bring me into this studio on the second floor of their beautiful old home. And I walk up in there and there's no air conditioning and I'm sweating, and they give me the headphones, and Filoni is on the phone on the other side. And I just hear this voice that sounds familiar, but I didn't really know him very well. And he goes, okay, Steve, so we decided that we're gonna go with whatever the accent was that we worked out at the time. We ran through a whole bunch of different accents. And he goes, and you're gonna be killing a stormtrooper. And I see stormtrooper in the script as he's saying this, and all of a sudden I went, oh my God, this is Star Wars. This is Star Wars! The inner fanboy squeal must have been outward, because they all laughed, and it was amazing. So that's when it really set in that it was Star Wars. And being a Star Wars fan since 1977, that excitement never stopped. Every single time we did a session from that point forward, I still felt that the same hairs on the back of the neck that I felt in 1977 when I first saw the Destroyer go overhead and felt the rumble. So anyway, it was a really weird experience getting in, but it never got old. Freddie, what was your experience getting on the shows? Because you worked on a bunch of the Star Wars shows.
Yeah, I was the same as you. I love that. I'd love to know what else they record in Birmingham. Was that in Birmingham where you did that? That's so cool. I really, for me, it's just been, again, I'm such a huge fan. For me, it's just the same thing. It's just been auditions. You just try to, they send you a description, and again, you start to figure out what's what, because you do see, I think they called the Force the knowledge or something at one time. It's like, and now the knowledge is strong with him. I'm like, no. Because they try to keep it, under wraps. So for me, yeah, it was just auditioning, and my inner geek just, freaks out anytime I work on a video game or anything, or someone asks you to do an iconic character or try to be a Wookiee for a number of projects. And what's weird is I had a project where they had translations of what the Wookiee was saying. So you had to make up how that would, like, okay, I'll meet you at the cargo bay. I'm really upset about this. But I don't know if you guys found that, like, they're pretty loose about, like, even Huttese or anything. Like, if you speak Klingon, you have to speak Klingon. This is really they're pretty open, which is very exciting. And yes, that's just generally it. It's just being around and auditioning.
And the three of us are old enough to have actually been in, at least the two of us are, to see it in 1977.
Yeah, I was very young, but I didn't understand. I was able to go into the theater, but I didn't quite understand the immensity, like what exactly was happening.
I was 17 and I didn't understand the
Yeah.
I didn't want to see a stupid space movie with an octopus in it, because they used to have like lobby cards, and they had the shot of Luke, in the trash compactor with the thing around his neck, and I was like, is this like some octopus space movie? Because the original commercials for it, the trailers, didn't have John Williams music, and it was, we've got a space adventure coming at you, and it was really cheesy music, and this thing wasn't color corrected. It just looked terrible, So I was like, this looks awful. We've waited 3 hours because it was sold out, and I was such a little jerk. And then seeing it, I was just, that downbeat was it for me. It was
we were all blown away.
I don't think
first
I
time.
breathed for 2 minutes. It was
Yeah.
amazing. Never ever dreamed that I would be a part of this universe.
I know. It's pretty crazy.
It's really true.
Yeah.
It's funny what you were saying about the Wookiee things. I spoke Aqualish and Huttese for a bunch of different projects. And I wanted to get it right. And I was doing all my research online. They said, no, we don't care. Just make it up.
You have to say certain lines.
There are
Right?
certain
things that, like, like certain things.
It has to be a
Phantom
voodoo,
Voodoo has to be very correct.
That can be correct. Lots of
It's
phlegm.
funny, weird having to play a version of Jabba that spoke basic, that spoke English,
Yeah.
you know, because they realized, oh no, some of them do actually speak
Yeah.
basic, you know, they just have chosen not to, you know.
Yeah.
You know.
If you've seen the Star Wars Resistance trailer for our next and final season, you will see that we have a new Hutt on the show who does actually speak English.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is pretty great.
I want the Wookiees though to make,
Yes, I speak it true. I do.
you know,
But I choose not to.
Sounds like Hebrew.
It sounds like you're underwater. It's like underwater Wookiee.
Underwater Wookiee. Help me.
Did we even answer your question? I don't know.
Is it panel over?
Talking all the way through.
Okay, fire away, sorry.
Alright, well, that's fine. My next question was, how did you prepare? I know you said you worked through different accents, so like, what kind of preparation did you do? Like, I know you said like, do like the lines. So, like, when you go for a role, what do you work through, I guess?
For me, it's an organic process. I look at the words in whatever direction I'm given. Hopefully, if they give you a picture, it creates pictures in my mind, and I just build something around that. For Zeb, the original direction, I think, was they wanted something that sort of sounded European-ish, and he was a big hulking character. That's all they really told me. He was a soldier. So I started with a real thick Cockney accent. And I brought that in the studio for the callbacks. And they said, yeah, that's great, but nobody will understand what you're saying. So they ran me through German and Russian and French and Italian. We went through a whole bunch of different accents. And what we landed on was basically a crappy South London with a little bit of Australian sprinkled in. And it just seemed to work for the character. By that time, we actually had a model of the character to look at. And the way he walked, the way he moved, there had to be something that rhythmically would work with his cadence too. He's almost simian the way he functions. So this worked pretty efficiently for him. I could take my beats and pauses when I needed to, that sort of thing. And he cussed a lot, but you know, the Disney-friendly cuss word, Carabast. But we ran it through with the pieces of dialogue they gave us at the callback. And I think we ran it through probably 20 or 30 times before we settled on what ultimately they used for him.
And Governor Price, all the Imperials were always English, you know, so my grandfather was English, so I've been messing around with that accent for a long time, but her level of arrogance and condescension it was one of the easiest characters I've ever had to play, and I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I mean, all I had to do was stand there like this, and all of a sudden Governor Price came into view, and it was so easy, it was really scary. Like, I was like, this is like, she has an iPad for torture. This is awesome. And I was just like, oh, there's something wrong with me. That it's really one of the easiest characters for me to get into that I've ever played. Yeah, I don't know why. It's just because, you know, I just thought of that rod strategically placed up at the bum, you know, and I'm just like, well, that's Governor Price, isn't it? And just all this, I don't know, it was so much fun. It's so much fun to tap into someone just that embracingly evil, that she just loved it. She didn't apologize for it. And there was I feel like the villains are really easy to play sometimes because their intentions are so clear. There is no conflict. It's just like she wants power. And the only conflict comes from when she can't get it, and that makes her angry. And like Hulk, you don't want to see Governor Price when she gets angry. Because if you don't know, Fred is also involved.
I've seen you angry. Don't want to do it.
But for her, I mean, it was just very simple to sort of go just rather Helen Mirren, Britishish, you know, and I'm a huge Downton Abbey fan, so I just sort of, you know, there was a great, who was it? Oh, it was in Sense and Sensibility. Have you guys seen it, the Emma Thompson version of Sense and Sensibility? And there's one of the sisters was sort of very, you know, and she had this awful sort of arrogance to her, and it was very nasal. So I kind of placed it in there instantly, and that was it. Governor Price. Evil.
And we're so opposite you in so many ways, and I love how easy it is that you got to go into it.
Well, except for the torture part.
Well, no, that I know.
She likes that.
That's why I'm a director.
What about you?
What about me?
Yeah.
How do I get into certain voices? Oh gosh. Well, let's see. For ballsy Tulsa when we worked together on that, and so it was just really trying to find. For that one, it was helpful to know who else was in it, what the other characters were, because I wanted to kind of do something that was different. Because I play a lot of very big voiced characters and stuff,
And trying to understand where his humor was, because a lot of it is
it's almost like his downfall or his demise kind of led, as opposed to a vocal thing. It was more of an attitude.
like he's selling these things. He doesn't quite know what they do, but maybe it'll work out. And
There's a kind of a weird heart of gold he has, but he's really definitely the comic relief in many ways. So he's kind of
frustrated mostly, but he can be led to something positive. But I'm just kind of aggravated.
you kind of just take a color and go with it, and see where it leads.
For him, it was finding how low he was going to be and how angry, and at what.
You know what I mean? He'll beat beats the stuffing out of somebody, but he's kind of a chicken.
It was also you and D. Baker together in the same room.
See, like little D doing this kind of voice. Yeah, so he's kind of